G'day guys, welcome back to True Eagle. Today we're going to continue our little draft focus series, I suppose if you want to call, keeping the draft content flowing. If you haven't seen it already, I've done a video highlighting which of the top prospects are probably targets for us with our current selection at pick 3, which could become pick 2. Bearing in mind, I am recording this the day before we play North Melbourne. You're probably going to see it Monday, so you guys will know whether or not we have pick 2 or 3 based on the game's result, I reckon. Regardless, this video is going to be looking at prospects a little bit further down. I think I listed about 6 to 8 prospects we could be looking at pick 2 in the first video. Today is looking at players who currently, as it currently stands, probably fall between that 5 to 20 region of the draft. Why is this relevant to us? A number of factors, right? So on the one hand, we could trade pick 2 or 3 down for a selection in this range. There's also the possibility that someone in this range actually does jump up to pick 2 or 3 anyway. That's how even this draft is. It could also be that Tom Barras, for instance, does get a trade to Hawthorn or something like that. That's the current rumor anyway. And we end up with a natural pick in this range as well. Just on the point that one of these guys could jump up, I mean, that would be dependent on, obviously, late season form. There is the draft combine where they get their athletic testing, and that can shift players up and down and disrupt the order a little bit. I think there's also probably the elephant in the room to consider as well, that it's kind of a known thing now that interstate clubs in particular probably do draft off a slightly different board than Victorian clubs based on, certain players making it known that they don't want to leave Victoria. So a good example of this is probably the 2022 draft. Now, if you recall, West Coast traded down from pick 2, ended up with what became 9 and 14, Ruben Ginbey and Elijah Hewitt. Now, from what I can gather and what's sort of been said since, West Coast were probably considering Aaron Cadden with that selection because guys like Sheasel and Wardlaw, it was rumoured at the time, I obviously don't know for sure, but it was kind of the known thing. Sheasel and Wardlaw weren't really willing to leave Victoria. So if West Coast had that pick, they probably would have taken Cadman. As it happens, GWS made a play for pick 1 and they were always taking Cadman for the same reason. Vic Country Boy didn't have any issues moving into state, apparently. So it's been said since that West Coast at pick 2, had they not secured a trade down, were considering, obviously, Cadman. They might have taken Ginbey at pick 2. They might have taken Jai Clark, and there was somebody else a little bit later on, which just suggests players in this range that I'm going to talk about could still be contenders for picks earlier in the draft. So I've got 5 guys here that I think could be good picks for us in that sort of range. So let's talk about some players I'll eliminate, all right? So just to make this clear why I've only got it down to 5. There's a heap of academy prospects. Isaac Kako is, especially under the new rules, almost certain to get to Essendon, so I haven't included him in this. There's Tyler Welsh, father-son to Adelaide, Ben and Lucas Camprioli. All these players will find their way to their clubs. And then there's a heap of talls in this range, which I've kind of eliminated. So let me know in the comments if you agree with me, but as far as I'm concerned, West Coast are not in a position to be spending a first-round pick, even if it's not our technical first selection, on a key forward. Like when you look at the list breakdown, Oscar Allen, Jake Waterman, Jack Williams, Archer Reed we just took last year as well, I just feel like it would be kind of irresponsible. Again, let me know in the comments if you disagree with that, but I think our priorities definitely need to be midfield-based. We could use a bit of run and carry from the back line. Key defenders, absolutely yes. So some other players that I won't cover in this: Jonty Fall, Job Shanahan, Harry Armstrong is probably the highest rated key forward at the moment. The Whitlock twins both have a bit of utility forward of centre. Even Alex Dodson as a ruck, I don't think he's going to be a realistic candidate for us. So I've got a list of 5 players here that I think are currently realistic for that 5, maybe let's call it 5 to 20 range, that we could hold some picks in. So let's just get straight into it. I've done enough of a preamble now. So one of the players that I think could be suitable for us is Toby Trager. Now, he's a 187 centimetre defender / wingman from Vic Country with obviously a bit of potential to grow a little bit further. So Toomey currently ranks him at 13, ESPN ranked him at 18. He does seem to be trending up the rankings. And in such an even draft pool, I wouldn't get too phased as to where he's necessarily rated by guys like Toomey or anything like that. But I think this guy does add something that we currently lack. You can make up your own mind as to whether we need to spend, certainly if it's our first pick, a selection on a running defender. There has been some suggestion that Trager, who is a great rebounder off halfback, a good interceptor, decent speed, can push up on the wing, compared to Will Day pre-draft. Now, it's important to note, Will Day bolted a lot in that draft, and he wasn't necessarily considered a lock to be a midfield. Now, he has sort of blossomed into this 6'3" plus running midfielder, but he was pre-draft a bit more of a rebounding halfback. Now, so with Travalia, obviously he still has the question to answer: is he a genuine inside midfielder? And if he does become a Will Day prospect, that only enhances his draftability and where he could go. So as a running defender, I'm not too sure if he'd be a serious candidate for a pick in the top 5 or 6 or anything like that, but it is possible. Obviously, this draft is going to be very subjective, but he is a good player. He is a good player. He's very courageous. He's got offensive firepower, a very good intercepting defender, and a very good prospect for anyone to select. It's just about us considering, is he right for us? Now, if Travalia is in a mix of other midfielders, then I think that makes sense for us. So if we, let's say we trade down to 6 and 12 or whatever, if that's even likely. If we take a genuine midfielder with 6 and add Travalia, then I think that makes perfect sense. But I do think our priorities should be midfield, and I know Travalia could potentially become that, but I think the position we're at, I feel more comfortable if we pick a guy that we know is going to be a midfielder. But I suppose that will be a decision that the recruiters have to make. I don't think we've had great luck with this in the past. I think Liam Duggan was drafted as a midfielder. Ruben Jimby certainly was, and I'm unsure of whether or not either of those guys are actually true midfielders, even though both have played midfield this year. So Travalia is a great first option. Let's talk about Xavier Lindsay, and I do like this guy, another guy who's bolting up, another Vic Country kid, and probably the difference with him is he's got a seriously good and classy outside game, which I like, and I think that is also something that we need. I think we've added a little bit of midfield grunt in the past, and again, probably not a priority if we were having certainly not one first round selection, and even if we had a few, probably not the first guy I'd pick, but probably in the top dozen of players that I like. So Toomey ranks him at 16, ESPN ranks him at 11. Now, 183 centimeters, he is a genuine midfielder, can play off a little bit of halfback because of his skill set, so he's quick and he's classy by foot, and what he does do is deliver the ball inside 50 really well. So when you look at our young crop of midfielders, that's probably something we lack. Outside of the obvious in Harley Reid, just reliable, precise delivery to the forwards is something that our young midfield probably doesn't quite have. And I do like those sorts of players. It was really good in the final game of the Carnival, where Vic Metro played Vic Country, and essentially the winner was going to win the championships. He had 30 disposals, 4 clearances, and 6 inside 50s. So I like his speed and skill. It's something that we don't have. Again, maybe not the first kid I'd pick in this range of picks, but I do kind of hope we end up with him because I do like his attributes. I do think he definitely adds something we don't have. Let's talk about the first West Australian, or the highest ranked West Australian in this draft pool as it currently stands, in Beau Allen. As far as I can tell, no relation to, certainly not Oscar, the surname's spelled differently. I'm not sure if he's related to Ed Allen, who was drafted to Collingwood. Either way, Beau Allen is a 191 centimeter defender slash midfielder from Western Australia. So he is pretty good athlete. He's very quick and he's big and he's strong. And to me, I get reminded of Ruben Jinby as a prospect when we drafted him. He's about the same height. He's well built, and again, probably one of those players that's transitioned from medium-sized defender to midfielder. I know he's played a little bit forward as well. And another similarity to Jinby is the athleticism, and equally, on the other hand, probably not a proven ability to win a lot of the football as a midfielder. So again, we've probably got a question mark on midfield application here with Beau Allen, but he's a tough player. He's combative, he's contested. He's also very defensively minded. Again, the similarities to Jinby are there. I wouldn't say I'm reminded of Jinby when I watch Allen per se, but on paper, the strengths, the weaknesses, the question marks, they do sort of apply to both players here. So we need to bear that in mind, that he probably hasn't proven that he can win 30, 35 possessions as a midfielder. And I do think maybe what we're looking for out of this draft is a player who can accumulate the footy. We've got a few players that can win early 20s possessions, and Beau Allen at this current point in time is not quite that. He's compared to Jordan Dawson. I think if he had Jordan Dawson's ball use, he'd be talked about as a top 3 to 5 selection in this year's draft. That being said, there's still upside there. So just because he's not a proven midfielder, it means he could become one, and that means that there's still upside in his development. Again, because of the question mark on his ability to find the footy and play as a full-time midfielder, he doesn't rank as high in priority for me. That being said, if he's a part of a mix of players that we bring in with multiple first-round selections, so like if we get pick 2 and we take Finn O'Sullivan, the best pure midfielder, at least in my opinion, and then we have pick 11 through Tom Barras, then Beau Allen as an addition would be good. So again, it's the mix of players we bring in, and I think this guy could be a good footballer. He's also WA's captain, if I'm not mistaken. So he ticks a lot of boxes there. It's just a case of whether, we've got picks in that range and what are the sorts of players we've brought in. Let's talk about Taj Hotton. Now, Taj Hotton is a player that I really do like the look of. The only thing with Taj Hotton, who is the brother of Ollie at St Kilda, is that he did an ACL this year, which makes him a big question mark in this year's draft. So he's 182 centimetre midfielder forward from Vic Metro, and if I'm not mistaken, his trajectory has been as a forward, primarily at first, who has genuine goal nous, that started to prove himself as a midfielder as well and found plenty of the footy. So I think there was a game against Oakley in round 2 of this year. We had 32 possessions and 4 goals. So if you've got a player who's classy, uses the ball well, runs hard, accumulates the footy, but is also really good in front of goal, I think you have the makings of a real top liner here. Again, like I said, the question mark on him is that he's done an ACL, and so he doesn't have the same ability to prove himself over the course of this season. You do find players who do ACLs in their draft year do tend to slide a little bit. I think Max King is an exception to that. It doesn't guarantee it. I still imagine he's probably going in the first round. To be completely honest with you, he's one of the 3 players that on big footy, and now take this with a massive grain of salt, big footy is not super reliable, but it is a good way to sort of pick up on murmurings that are being said. But Hotton, Josh Smiley, Finn O'Sullivan are 3 players that there is a bit of talk don't want to leave Victoria. So I thought I'd just throw that in there, being honest with my audience. I don't really know the extent of that. However, from a talent point of view, I really do like this kid, and I would be very happy if we had a pick around this range in the top 12, even top 15, depending on where he goes, to pick up Taj Hotton. But I think he is exactly the sort of player that I would love to have in the middle of the first round. The 5th player is Joe Berry, who is a small forward from Vic Country. So a pretty good Vic Country representation in this video. 180 centimetre small forward. And, you know, this is a tricky one. So on Berry first, he's ranked at 11 by ESPN, 17 by Toomey. Again, it's so even. I think he probably goes in that top dozen to 15 range at this current point of time, bearing in mind so much can change, but very classic modern day small forward. So runs up the field to accumulate possession, great around goals. I'm pretty sure he kicks goals on both feet, hits the scoreboard regularly, great intensity, great pressure, and I think this guy will be a gun, my personal opinion. The only argument against Berry for us is probably just that we've recruited fairly well, or at least heavily, in this position. So I'm not saying that any of these players are going to be better than Berry, but when you consider, you know, we've got Noah Long to develop, you know, Tyrell Dewar, different sort of forward, nonetheless a forward who's going to take up a spot. Tyler Brockman, we've just traded for, again, probably same sort of style. Jack Graham, we might sign as a free agent. I don't know how I feel about that, but nonetheless, you can see a bit of a logjam. And I would also throw Jack Hutchinson into this mix, because Jack Hutchinson's strength, I know he's 190 centimetres, but I don't think he's necessarily going to be an undersized key forward presence for us. I think he's going to be a hard-working, athletic, defensive midfielder. The comparisons to Jamie Cripps with his work rate are already there. So I guess the point I'm making here is that a small pressure forward in the nature of Berry is less of a priority than some of these other positions, particularly if they can be midfielders. Now, Joe Berry has shown a little bit of ability to run through the midfield. So I suppose if he can do that, then he's no different to Taj Hotton, who I just talked up. So again, on talent, I'd be happy to get this guy onto our list, even if it doesn't fit so much of a positional need. But great, genuine crummer. I think in the modern game, it's good to have a blend of like a mix of small forwards who can hurt you in different ways. I think Joe Berry could be an absolute gun. So you can start to see, or at least from the way I'm describing it, in my personal opinion, I think there's some real good quality in this 5 to 15 to 20 range, where I'd love ball use, goal nous. Joe Berry's got it all. So those are the top 5 that I would like to see us potentially get this year. Like I said, Joe Berry's not the guy I would pick with our first selection. I'd love to prioritize a genuine midfielder, but gee, I think on talent, he'd be great to have. So those are the players that I think are viable for us at this current point in time. It is very, very early. A few players that might feature in a second rounder video that I just didn't quite have make this list. So Tom Gross, a young inside midfielder, pretty small bodied, but a good extractor. Cooper Hines, Christian Moraes. Then you got a few talls. Alexander Tauru, I think that's how you say his name. Matt Whitlock, Noel Mraz. These guys are tall defenders that I'm probably looking at the second round. Like I said, I think the depth of the draft at the moment is there's going to be a heap of talls available from 10 to 40 at this current point in time. So we can probably delay our need for a key back as it currently stands to our picks in the 20s and 30s, whatever that ends up looking like. Harrison Oliver is another running defender that I like the look of. So there's a bit going on. There's going to be plenty that's added to this list, of course, but let me know what you think of the players I've nominated there that I'd like the look of. If we end up, you know, with a pick, let's say for Tom Barrass, these are the prospects that I think could line up nicely for this selection. So let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.